And First and Now is back. It's our great pleasure to once again be with you. Matt Baker alongside Nick Kowalski, fresh off a bye week, back, ready to strap on the pads and the helmet and hit somebody in double blue. We're broadcasting from the Go-Goat Sports Studio inside the Wall Center. Nick, you're looking refreshed and ready to roll here. How was the bye week?
Yeah, I'm ready to roll. I'm not going to be hitting anybody in double blue this week.
Don't jump to conclusions now.
Good point. But yeah, it was good bye week. Got some exploring in. Was still in the office majority of days, and filmed a bunch of content for the remainder of the season, which is kind of some pressure off my shoulders, which is nice, and ready to get back at it now.
Yeah, for those, every once in a while we get asked by fans, people just interested in what we do for the organization and, what goes into planning a game from a game ops and a content perspective. It's not just show up to the stadium and, do this, do this, do this. In the case of yourself, both of us really, we work closely with game operations, and a lot of times the bye week is an opportunity to work ahead on some of that stuff. So some of those video features you might see, say, September 30th when Ottawa's in town.
Yes.
You will have shot last week, and that's already in the can, as they say. So.
Exactly, yeah, because majority of players did stick around. I know we had, but some went back home. For example, Brian Burnham, we have to film some of his content in the next week or so because he went back home to Tulsa for his bye week. Bo Lacumba went to Montreal, and I know Lucky got out of town for a bit, but the Nathan Rourkes, the Javon Cotoys, pretty much the local guys, and maybe the first-year players too. Most of them stuck around for the week, right?
Yeah, some of those younger guys, maybe those not as familiar with the city, use the opportunity to lay down some living arrangements. We talked to James Butler last week, and he was getting ready to explore some landmark spots, some sightseeing spots. He was going up to the Suspension Bridge, I think. And reminder, you can listen to the James Butler episode from last week and all the First and Now episodes, perhaps, if you like, at whatever podcast platform you choose, the Go-Goat Sports website as well. And Lions and Argonauts coming up here Saturday. We are going to tee that matchup up. We'll talk about the opposition in just a few minutes. We'll go around the CFL. Tell you what, couple of interesting results.
Oh yeah.
But you had the chance to do some sightseeing yourself. It wasn't all bye week work for you.
Yeah, the weekend I did take off pretty much completely. So on Saturday, me and a high school friend I have here, and he actually lives in Surrey, so very convenient for me. But
there you go.
We've been planning this for a couple months now, just based off the bye week, just how it worked out. Worked out for him as well. So we went up to Squamish on Saturday and did the Chief Trail.
Yep.
I believe that's what you call it. Yeah, and it was a challenging hike. Being a Winnipeg guy, it was definitely no Manitoba hike with the elevation and
no mountains in Manitoba.
Yeah, to do some like pretty much a rock climbing at the end too. That was a little bit intense and
climb a ladder at some point.
Yeah, so that was a good hike, and then I did Stanley Park on Sunday and kept it more local here, and just two awesome and different experiences. But the legs are a little sore today.
You're slowly but surely coming a full-fledged West Coast guy.
Yeah, getting everything in.
You went to Commercial Drive on Saturday night.
Yeah, another thing. Yeah. I went out to a couple of restaurants down there. Just this city is. I always think about this Rick Campbell when we were interviewing him on the very first episode of First and Now for this season.
Yeah.
But Rick said the thing I say about Vancouver is that 30 minutes any direction is something totally different. There's water, mountains. 30 minutes east would be like farmland in Abbotsford. And then
you saw that when you went to Kamloops, just how much the landscape changes, so to speak. So.
And it's so true, and it's so good to have.
Yep. And next thing you got to do, you got to get on the grouse grind.
Yeah. You've been telling me about it because you hit it up twice twice last week, right?
So I'll tell you what happened. It was not my intention to go twice. My intention was just to go once, just to kind of test out the waters, so to speak. Before I was in this job, back when I was back at TSN/Team 1040, I did a long stint on the afternoons. So summertime, before I had kids, what better way to go stay in shape and do something before work, go to the grouse grind. I did it several times over the course of a few summers, but slowly but surely responsibilities change. Don't live quite as close to the North Shore anymore as I did then. As you can probably tell watching this podcast, the dad bod's a real thing. Not quite in the shape I once was. Who is, right? Other than yourself and maybe Kurt Appleby there in the control room. He's still in pretty good shape.
Don't short yourself.
Well,
if you can do the gross grind twice in 4 days.
And I surprised myself. I was not any worse than I was at it last year. I did it a few times. But anyway, my intention was just to go once. Okay, middle of the week, Wednesday, bye week.
Yeah.
But then I'm thinking, okay, $20 to park, $8 to park, $20 to take the gondola down. Used to be mostly free parking. It's all paid parking now. And the gondola, in a span of 10 years, 12 years, whenever I started doing it, has gone gradually up. It was $5 at one point. Then it went to 10. Then it went to 15. And I was like, $20. Come on. So the young lady selling the Skyride tickets up at the top. So I do the hike. It's all good. The young lady reminds me, if you want to get a season membership, which is what I used to do when I was doing it 3-4 times a week, maybe not 3-4 times a week, maybe twice. But she said to me, if you want to get the annual pass, you put it includes your parking and your Skyride. So you can basically put $28 toward it. And then, so I'm doing the math. Okay, so the pass is $249 minus 28, so divided by whatever. Carry the 1, carry the 2, whatever. If I do this 9 times, 9 more times in the next year, it'll pay itself off because the year-long pass includes your Skyride and your parking, and there's other perks like merchandise discounts and the Starbucks. You get a bit of a discount even though it's a more expensive Starbucks. So you essentially get Starbucks for the regular price, like if we were out on Burrard Street here, just a block away or something. But anyway. So I figured, I caved and bought the membership. So, okay, put the $28 toward it, and then, okay, might as well do it as much as I can. So get the hall pass on Saturday morning and go do it and improve my time by, I think, 2.5 minutes. So it ended up being a wise investment so far. I got to do it 7 or 8 more times in the next year, and I'll get my money's worth.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that if fans want to bring their pen and paper for autographs, the Grouse Grand is where to find you, right? That's what you're saying?
Yeah, there you go. Do people still sign autographs? Do people still ask for autographs, or is it all about selfies now?
I saw Bolo Combo signing something today.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, the fans that show up at practice definitely want autographs. So anyway, the first of 3 bye weeks. Yes, we're going to have another one here coming up, and I think we play 3 more times. Toronto, Ottawa, Winnipeg.
Bye.
So, 2 byes in the first 5 weeks, which is fine. I mean, we'll get refreshed and healthy for the second half of the season, so there'll be some more chances to do some activities. But Lions and Argos here on Saturday, and this is funny. 2 teams that are 1-0.
Yeah.
One of them, that would be us, in 4th place in the West. Toronto, by virtue of the other Eastern teams being 0-2, and we'll go around the CFL before we're done here. Toronto in 1st place. So what's your most intriguing aspect for this game here, Nick?
I think off the top, we've heard a lot of chatter about the BC offensive line that performed, I think, above standards last week or in week 1 against Edmonton.
Right.
And granted, it was the Elks. Maybe the talent level for the Elks, you could say, is probably not where Toronto's talent level at the defensive line position is, because Toronto's got the likes of Sean Oakman, Shane Ray, Jagarrett Davis on that defensive line, and the average CFL fan may not even know who Shane Ray is, but he was a first-round NFL draft pick, was with Toronto last year, and all reports out of the Argos camps was that Shane Ray is dominating. He is going to be a force, and then he had trouble staying healthy last year. But when he was in the lineup, I want to say he only played a handful of games. There were a couple players like that last year that, like Braylon Addison's one that comes to mind too, right? Played like 3 games, but you know that he's like an elite level talent when he's on the field. And Shane Ray was healthy last week, and I want to say he recorded the sack. I can't guarantee that right now, but I know he looked good.
Sure, had one of those guys.
I'm pretty sure he had one, yeah. And then Sean Oakman is really the Willie Jefferson inside of the defensive line. He plays tackle, but he's like 6'8", kind of a freakish athletic body that really can have his way with people. So it'll be a great test for the BC offensive line on Saturday. And if they perform up to the same standard, I think any worry that there was from outside sources going into the season, I think that's almost all but eliminated, correct?
Yeah, and this offensive line for the Lions was absolutely dynamite against Edmonton, and allowing Rourke time to throw, and a couple of those plays that got a little dicey. I mean, we saw what it's like now to have a quarterback who can make more plays with his feet. But yeah, I mean, James Butler and the running game silenced their critics there. I mean, we had James on last week again talking about the 4 touchdowns and eclipsing the century mark in terms of rushing. We hadn't had that happen in years for Lions tailbacks. But those Toronto D linemen you mentioned, the stat sheet may not jump out. They might not be getting to the quarterback as consistently, but they're good run stoppers. So they're going to plug those holes, and they're going to penetrate, and they're going to do what they can to limit the Lions and their mobile offense. So this will be a nice little follow-up test for that Lions running game led by James Butler. So that's going to be a very interesting aspect for me. The trenches, the line of scrimmage, I know it seems like we always talk about it, but that's going to be extra important here this game. And we're going to talk a bit about Nathan Rourke on this episode as well, but I'm interested to see where he picks up here. I mean, clearly that's a guy who's not celebrating anything yet. We know he's all business, and we know he knows more than anyone else. It's a different challenge. It's a new season in a sense, each game, each week. So they're not celebrating. That game's over. It was great, but that's over now. You got to go out and prove yourself against a team that, again, a couple plays go differently against Hamilton in the Eastern Final. It's Toronto that's in the Grey Cup against Winnipeg, not the Hamilton Tiger Cats. I'm not discrediting Hamilton, but this is a Toronto team that no doubt, kind of for the first time in a few years, went into a season knowing who their quarterback was going to be, McLeod Bethel Thompson. Yes, they really finally proclaimed him the guy. And, I thought their win against Montreal, we'll go over it later, but I thought that game was not as close as the score indicated. So this is a Toronto team who has championship expectations this year.
Yeah, and you mentioned it earlier that it's going to be a good measuring stick because Toronto was really where they left off, and that's the top of the Eastern Division. And like you just said, a team that was a couple plays away. They're a blown lead away from the Grey Cup last season.
Yeah.
So another interesting tidbit that I find about this game. So the Argos, another one of the players that I think he was named an All-Star last year, and I think for really good reason, was Chris Edwards, their Sam linebacker.
Right.
But he will not be playing on Saturday because he received a suspension at the end of last season that carried over into I believe the first 6 games actually of 2022. But instead of Chris Edwards at that Sam position, it is Robert Priester, and that's not a household name in the CFL yet. But what I find really interesting about this is he's pretty much Toronto's version of Tyneil Cooper for us.
Right.
And what I mean by that is that Robert Priester was with Winnipeg for a couple games in 2018, had not played in the CFL since, and started in week 2 for Toronto in 2022. So 4 years later was his next game in the CFL. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's 2018 was Tyneil Cooper's year with Winnipeg too.
Yep.
So it
is funny.
It's just a weird, unrelated. Well, they're related, but unrelated in how these two players got to where they are in their current football careers. So it's another interesting fact about this game. And then he's beside Enoch Moamba, and who's been a star in the CFL for years, and Winton McManus is back in the CFL too, and he's their will linebacker this season, and he looked really good last week. For those who don't know who McManus is, he was with Calgary a couple of seasons ago, turned that into an NFL opportunity with New Orleans, and is now back up in Canada.
Yeah, and Corey Mace is the one coordinating it all. The pride of Coquitlam, former Buffalo Bill, former Calgary Stampeder, good defensive position coach with the Stamps, and now he's there. So, yeah, I'm not trying to sell this Lions offense short, but I don't think they're going to be putting up over a 50 burger this week. But
hey, we'll see.
This game is funny. So, speaking of that, speaking of putting up points, Nathan Rourke, we're going to do something a little different this week. We're going to talk to Lukas Moore. This is a guy who has a familiarity with Nathan from his time with the Ohio Bobcats. Lukas, a broadcaster in Ohio, a former classmate of Nathan Rourke. So we're going to get him on to kind of reminisce about Nathan's time with the Bobcats and some fun that Lukas used to have talking about the Nathan Rourke fan club.
Yeah, we were exchanging some Twitter DMs earlier in the week, and and he was going in depth about what he's obviously still following Nathan, and he said like he said that Nathan's week 1 performance was just what he was doing at Ohio, like using his feet, throwing the ball too, and being accurate and poised in the pocket and all of that, but also like just bouncing off people. He has this. I'm gonna ask him about it for when we're actually recording. But he has this theory about how Nathan uses his body when he's going up against defenders, and really in depth stuff about Nathan Rourke. So I'm looking forward, to chatting with Lukas here.
Awesome. We look forward to that here coming up in just a matter of seconds. We'll go around the CFL. A couple more intriguing matchups in week number 3. It's the Lions, it's the Argos Saturday. Get your tickets starting at just $25. The Backyard Street Party is back, but on Terry Fox Plaza this time, not on Robson Street. You can enjoy some $5 beers, $5 margaritas. I don't know, Nick, we might have to sneak out and get a couple of pregame beverages in before we start our work. So, again, tough act to follow from the season kickoff, but all the Lions can control is what they do on the field, and we'll get some more fans excited to come back. First and now, the official BC Lions podcast. We'll head to Ohio coming up. First and now, the official BC Lions podcast is live. It's Matt Baker. It's Nick Kowalski inside the Wall Center at the Go-Goat Sports Studios. Outstanding studio here at the Wall Center in downtown Vancouver. And we're going to venture off to Chicago now, I believe. Lukas Moore, host of the 3 a.m. Coney podcast. He does a little bit of play-by-play, all kinds of broadcasting gigs for Lukas. A former Ohio Bobcat, attended the school when one Nathan Rourke was there, setting all kinds of football records. So if there was a Nathan Rourke fan club, I think Lukas Moore here would be a card-carrying member. Lukas, good of you to join us, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, guys. Was super thrilled. I tweeted out, hey, I need to get on. I know there's CFL podcasts out there because I obviously tuned in to watch my guy, Nathan Rourke. And you guys, Nick reached out, and I was super happy that he did because I'm able to talk Nathan Rourke again. I thought I had lost the traction on that when he went up to the CFL, when I thought he had a chance to maybe make the back end of an NFL roster. So to be able to talk him again, I'm really grateful for it because he gave me quite a few fun segments and arguments and moments while at Ohio University.
Well, any friend of Nathan Rourke is certainly a friend of ours, and we appreciate you making the time. So why don't we let's go back there in a few years to the campus at Ohio. How did your friendship and your relationship, so to speak, with Nathan start there, Lukas?
Well, I don't think Nathan would ever call me a friend. I think he might remember me. We've had a few conversations and we've done a few interviews. I've interviewed him in studio. I've interviewed him on the field. I've interviewed him after games and post-game press conferences. So he might remember the face. But my biggest moment in memory with Nathan Rourke was I was the only reporter, me and my buddy Russ Heltman, who does radio in Cincinnati, and Jason Arkley, who covers the Bobcats still today. He was a working professional at the time. Russ and I were upperclassmen students. And we went to watch Nathan Rourke's first training camp practice. And it took me 15, 20 minutes of watching him and going, man, I think this kid's got something special. I liked his tape coming out of Fort Scott Community College. And he had bad stats, but he had a horrible offensive line. And I really liked the potential that Nathan Rourke showed in that film. And I thought quarterback was a need for the Bobcats after Quentin Maxwell had a so-so performance, got replaced by Greg Windham in the MAC championship game the year before. So I went down on the field and everybody was busy talking to Quentin Maxwell, who the whole world expected to be the starter. And I went over and I made sure that I talked to Nathan Rourke. And it took the 10 minutes of that conversation of talking to him to realize that this was a deathly serious person. A very, very serious football person that was not here to play school or go to parties. He was here to be the best football player he could possibly be. And this was back when he was a sophomore. And just that amount of focus and realism that came off in my very first interaction with him, it made me go out on the radio that day and say, hey, Nathan Rourke is the player to watch this year. Well, he had 22 rushing touchdowns that season. So, and he ended up taking the starting job by week 2. And I didn't really get the on-field stuff. Yeah, it was great. I think it was better than Quentin. In much respect to Quentin, who had some success at lower levels of college football, but it was the attitude. It was the professionalism. And that's why I always knew he would be at some professional level. And I figured with him being Canadian, the CFL would be a perfect fit, and it's turning into that for him because he's dedicated his entire existence to being the best quarterback possible. And when you get somebody like that that has the natural talent he has, you just get constant improvement and you get a player like you've seen so far.
Yeah, well said. It's a guy who's sharp in the mind is probably his most impressive trait. That's something you need when you're the starting quarterback, whether that's in college or in the pros. But yeah, you mentioned the MAC championships. With the Bobcats, it was also 3 straight bowl game wins. I think he was MVP of the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. I mean, what did he do for the Bobcats, Lucas, in terms of kind of reestablishing a winning standard for that program?
Well, I think that your quarterback, well, one, Frank Solich is a legendary two quarterback system coach. And I don't know whether he got that from Nebraska or whether there just wasn't enough talent at Ohio. But it was Tyler Tettleton was the main starter, and then he would do this two-starter thing every year. And it looked like he wanted to do that with Quentin Maxwell, and Nathan Rourke ripped the job from him and made it to where Frank had no choice. But even during Nathan's junior year, he sat down Nathan against Howard, I believe, where Cam Newton's little brother was playing quarterback, and they actually benched him in that game. He ended up starting the whole season, but he always played with that two quarterback system. And to have a guy that can win the job with that type of coaching and not just be, a starting quarterback, the starting quarterback, almost a franchise guy, as we would say when we cover the NFL. That's what Nathan Rourke became. So you had consistency in practice. You had consistency in the team's makeup, in the leadership model. And I think all of that led to a lot of success. But really the main part of Nathan Rourke that led to Ohio's success was his ability to generate offense because of his smarts and because of his escapability left to right on the read option. Because the read option was so deadly with the ball in Nathan Rourke's hands that allowed A.J. Oled, who's now in the CFL, and numerous other running backs have career moments and years with Nathan Rourke under center. And it was a combination of the talent and the professionalism. But I really do believe that it was just the perfect fit at the perfect time. This guy can run our system better than we could have ever imagined it being run. And you saw that immediately in the offensive production before the leadership factors even set in for Nathan Rourke.
Mm-hmm. And Lucas, you and I, we were talking on Twitter beforehand a bit, and one thing that there's a bunch of things that really stood out when we were having our conversations, but one thing in particular that you mentioned about Nathan's game that I found fascinating was your theory about how he approaches contact. Can you just go into more detail about what you were telling me there?
Yeah, so there's an old radio segment on Sports Beat WUB that I did with Nathan where I threw this theory at him, and he kind of laughed at it and said, well, maybe I haven't really thought about it. But that's kind of what makes Nathan Rourke so dangerous, is that he doesn't think about getting hit. So BC fans, just go out there, rewatch the last game. There were a few plays that had happened. And it's when he's running not directly left-right, but at an angle, right? Upfield and moving towards the sideline. Guys will attack him at a side angle, and instead of him getting hit and moving left or right, it's almost like the player slides off of him. I've never really seen it before in the sport of football, especially at the collegiate level when I was watching it in the MAC. And it's because when you watch Nathan Rourke run, I never see him brace for a hit. And they say this about car accidents to where, hey, if you're about to be in a car accident, the best thing to do would be to relax every muscle in your body. And they've done studies where people in plane crashes that were asleep tend to have less injuries than everybody that was tensing up their whole body and flexing everything. And Nathan kind of does that on the football field where you'll see most guys brace for hits, and then the contact kind of gets absorbed into their body and then into the ground. Nathan just doesn't worry about getting hit. He keeps running. He keeps a good tight hold of the football. He keeps his feet moving. And that causes guys, it looks like they're not even impacting his movement. They just slide right off of him. And he's done it to big guys. And he especially does it all the time to defensive backs. But it's one of the most unique skills I've ever seen. And he picks up 2 or 3 extra yards per carry because of that short space agility and make people miss ability. And that generate so much more in your running game if you're able to get 3 more yards per carry from your starting quarterback. And I think we saw how much commitment that Edmonton had to make against BC in the last game to Nathan Rourke in the run game, and it opened up James Butler to run wild on everybody. And that's the type of stuff we saw all the time at OU. The 59 points, the not being able to stop the running back, the heavy quarterback rushing numbers, that's all that happened at Ohio University against all type of competition. That's why when I saw the stat line and went back and rewatched the game, it looked just like OU, except you guys in the CFL have a wider field, which only helps in this type of offense and with this type of player. So I really do think that it might not be 59 every week, but there's going to be a lot of points scored over in Vancouver.
Yeah, that's a super fascinating breakdown.
Awesome.
Yeah. Another thing that stood out to me was it was a simpler comment, but you said he is throwing the ball harder than ever. And I've in the offseason, I had the pleasure of filming Nathan during some of his. He works out in North Vancouver with the quarterback kinesiologist coach Rob Williams. And that's what I saw too. I would watch him throw the ball, and I'm thinking to myself, like, this is not a normal quarterback throwing. Like, it's hard and it's consistent, and he's very like particular about how he throws the ball. So I'll transition this question into you saw that he was throwing the ball harder from your observations. But also how much like I'm even interested to find out like how close are you following the CFL? Is it I'm imagining it's more because of Nathan Rourke or what did you even know about the CFL before Nathan arrived?
I mean, I'm a sports broadcaster, so I know that it's the Grey Cup. I know you guys play on a wider field. The goalposts are in the front. I know the general history of the league. I could maybe have named a few teams in the CFL, and then if there's great players or great highlights, I mean, I try to have it on my Twitter feed at all times. But outside of that, Nathan Rourke, that BC game was the first. Okay, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to watch this game, and I really do enjoy what the product is. But my when you mentioned Nathan Rourke and his ability to throw the football, if you're looking for a comparison to other CFL quarterbacks, it's not even in comparison to the rest of the league. It's how close I thought Nathan was to being an NFL player in college, and the things that I needed to see him do to get there, he's done. And I think that if he were the level of talent he is right now, and you put him right back into OU and put him back in the draft cycle, or you put him in a worse draft class, he could have ended up being a 6th-round pick in the NFL. And that's kind of where I'm at with Nathan is you've got this, he's a native Canadian, so this league is a perfect fit for him. I think he's more marketable up there. And it's going to get to the point where I think he's going to produce so much statistically with you guys that he's going to get NFL interest, and there's going to be a real conversation piece of, okay, where's my career better served? That's a conversation that's way far off. But I know that Nathan has the mindset, the makeup, and with the velocity that he's added on these throws, I mean, if he just shows some layering, some progression, there's a real chance that he's getting interest from a lot of places because of how much of a professional he is. And, his explosiveness moving side to side. If he's making people miss in the NCAA and then he goes to the CFL and he keeps making people miss, somebody's going to take a shot on him that he can make NFL DBs miss. And if he can do that on the read option, there's a lot of NFL offenses that could use him. So I know that there wasn't really your question. It's kind of where I took it there, Nick. But
no, it's great. Yeah.
Something funny too. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but Nathan, we had him on the podcast about 2 months ago, actually, and I was Googling just as I do in terms of prep. I was just looking up some of the articles I've written about him, and he had a NFL workout with the New York Giants, but as a wide receiver. So he was going up with like Kadarius Toney, and Nathan said it wasn't unfortunately what he wanted, obviously being a quarterback, but the NFL has seen his physical attributes and saw that as NFL potential. So, and it's obviously the goal is to go to and if you're playing professional football, you do want to be an NFL player, and we're not going to beat around the bush and say that, but yeah, like Nate, it's an interesting problem to have if you have superstar players in the CFL that the NFL could potentially take them and whatnot, and it goes back into drafting too, right?
And I think this Nathan's, because you guys have talked about and you talked about in our message exchange, the rarity of a Canadian quarterback.
Yes.
And I just think that there's like, I feel like that, I don't know, because I've been exploring your guys' space, especially since I started talking to you, and trying to find, okay, what's the reaction? Do people kind of like, are they mentioning or realizing what kind of just happened with Nathan Rourke? Do they realize what might happen to this league right now? And I don't see any of that. Now, maybe I'm just a crazy kid who saw them against a bad Edmonton team, and this is not what BC's going to look like. But when I've seen it before at other levels, at historically dominant paces, and I've seen them dispatch teams who are above 500 who are competing for them in the conference within a quarter and a half, to where I'm standing on the sideline and the other team's completely given up by the time we're in the middle of the second quarter. I saw that routinely. So the fact that I see it again in a professional league and it's number 12 at quarterback, to me, that just is something that's going to keep happening. So his ceiling, I can't even describe to you guys because of the nature of Canadian football, and because of just him as a person and knowing the guy and knowing the kid and knowing how much work he puts in. And if, he had the opportunity to learn last year, now he's full-fledged, thrown into it. It is special. And I think that is something that BC Lions fans should get ready for. It might not be as easy as it was back in the MAC. I guarantee it won't be, but it's certainly possible that he can produce week in, week out the way he did. And, I think that it's more of, he's also going to make your offense produce more. There were so many games at Ohio where he'd have 12 passing attempts, but he would have 145 rushing yards. But his presence on the field would open things up so much so for everybody else. You'd end up with 55 points. Like James Butler, what an amazing performance by him. But if you go back, I think it was his run to the right where he makes a man miss. There were so many touchdowns in the game, hard to remember which one. But you watch Nathan giving that read option. And it's not that he tricks everybody, but he's so good with the handoffs and disguising all that he will always fool. It's almost guaranteed 100% every time, and I've seen it so many times. He will fool one defender drastically on the play to where they are just completely lost, and they ruin it for everybody else. Because when you're running wide zone, it's about gap assignments, baby. You got to stay in your lane.
Yeah.
And there's one play where Nathan I think James runs right. So Nathan fakes it. Nathan goes left or whatever. But his fake, nobody's fooled by it on the line, but a linebacker comes down and you watch two Edmonton players take each other out. Because one guy went the wrong way because he was going after Rourke, even though he should have been going after Butler. And that will happen even if two guys don't take each other out. It's the hesitation step. It's the 2 steps left or 2 steps right from somebody in the second level or from somebody on the line that opens up these massive, wide gaps in defenses that create chunk running plays. And then off those chunk running plays, you create space in the passing game, and it becomes impossible to stop. The only thing that can stop it is a singular disruptive defender. So, like an Aaron Donald type that's tossing away the guard, or a shutdown corner, maybe taking away half of the field, things, or a bad offensive line performance. Those things can ruin it. But if you've got everything clicking, and with his ability to make those decisions on the read option, it just becomes almost impossible to defend.
Hey, Lucas, this is all great stuff, but while we have you here for a couple more minutes, enlighten us a little bit on the Rourke train. What was that all about?
Well, the Rourke train was because, from day one of camp, I was like, Nathan Rourke should be the starter. And I don't know why we're even messing around here. And that was kind of my opinion on it, and it was my opinion on the radio. Now, I might have been younger and just trying to plant a hot take flag in the Ohio University sports talk universe. But I genuinely believe that. This kid should be the starter. He provides more upward explosiveness for the offense. He's got a higher ceiling. And we just watched Quentin Maxwell throw the ball behind his own head in the MAC championship game. So do we really need to run this experiment again? And what the Rourke train was me slowly convincing a lot of students that covered the team that he should be the starter. And so we had the Rourke train going every week. And then we had like the local beat reporter would come on. And I remember a very, very, I think Jason Arkley does some of the best work in Southeast Ohio, but we had a very heated Nathan Rourke or Quentin Maxwell debate on the air, which I don't really need to brag about now.
Yeah.
But that was what the Rourke train was. It was this, hey, I know he's not as big as Quentin Maxwell and his arm doesn't look as great, but look how slippery he is. Nobody can tackle the guy. And okay, well, he doesn't look like he's super fast or super over the top. It's nothing that blows your mind, but it's the little things across the board that he does over and over and over again within the read option, within all those things that made us and me believe in him. And then getting to talk to him. And then I'd walk into the facility, fellas, and I'd look into a room and there's a little light on. And in sitting there watching film at a time that nobody else is there is Nathan Rourke. Coaches aren't even there.
Yeah.
Coaches aren't even there. And there he is watching film. And numerous times I would catch Nathan watching film and or staying late. And I'd see him around that stadium all the time. I'd be going up to have fun on our party street in Athens, and I'd walk by the building and you'd see Nathan Rourke on the field throwing. Like, it was things like that over and over and over again, to where he earned my trust as a sports commentator to plant my flag and have argument after argument after argument until he was the concrete starter. Because I remember they benched him in the second year and we had to restart the Rourke train. You would think 22 rushing touchdowns would have killed that thing, but we had to have the argument again, and then it was over, and it's all in the past. But that Rourke train was it was definitely an Ohio thing where a bunch of us just wanted to say, hey, we really want Nathan Rourke to be the starter, and we're going to keep yelling about it until he is. And breaking all the school records and stuff just made the group of us that were on it look very smart. And we're all still friends today, and I think the Rourke train has a lot to do with that. So I thank Nathan for his success on the field bringing us together.
Yeah, of course. And I just want to bring up one more point too, that I was telling Matt this earlier. I was reading one of your messages out loud and I said, Matt, does this sound familiar? And your message was, yeah, I would see him every day running in sprints after practice by himself, because he still does that up in BC here. We were at training camp in the pouring rain and he was doing it by himself. He pretty much does it every practice, but again, it's no days off for that guy. And I see the same things you're saying. It's why I was so intrigued to get you on here and get all this fascinating stuff that you've been explaining to us. It's really insightful.
Very good, yeah.
Well, also, and my final point on this is because I spent a lot of time, because I was in Athens, I spent a lot of time covering Joe Burrow as well. So, and I want to say that there's a lot of similarities, and a lot of the research and conversations I've had with Joe's family and those close to him, and studying what work ethic he had in high school and then the work ethic he had at LSU. And then at the same time covering Nathan Rourke and the type of work ethic and things he has. Here's the main similarity between Nathan Rourke and Joe Burrow. They stopped caring about other people's opinion on them a long time ago. And their work ethic does not come from a need to prove other people wrong. They decided a long time ago, Nathan Rourke and Joe Burrow, that they're going to be the best quarterback that their body allows them to be. And nothing will stop them from that goal. And wherever they end up, whether it be the Canadian Football League or the Super Bowl parade, wherever that may end up, that's where they're going to go. But they decided for themselves, because they had been so doubted. I mean, Nathan Rourke threw 59 touchdowns, won a state championship in Alabama, and the only legitimate school that gave him any serious interest was Fort Scott Community College in Kansas. So he had to make the decision, guys, that I'm just going to be the best quarterback I can be, and I don't really care what anybody else's opinion is. That natural love of the game, the natural love of self-improvement, is something that is so rare, not just in football, but in every profession on earth. It's not about money. It's not about fame. It's not about proving a coach wrong or a parent or an old friend. It is just a battle between Nathan Rourke and himself. And the same thing for Joe Burrow. It's just a battle between Joe Burrow and himself. And when you find guys like that and they have any natural talent, keep betting on them. Keep betting on them, because they tend to win. And they tend to win a lot. And so I don't know if Nathan Rourke will ever circle around and make it to the NFL, but I know he's going to be the best quarterback that he can possibly be. And we just saw him drop 59 against Edmonton. So I imagine he'll probably do more of the same. And, the same guarantee for Joe Burrow in the NFL. And I just think that to see somebody believe in him at BC, because I was worried that first year. I knew that he was a quarterback of the future, but to see the scheme and everything be revolving around Nathan, I think that's so fantastic, and he's going to do wonders with that opportunity.
No doubt we'll aim to keep that Rourke train going. Listen, Lukas, this was outstanding. We appreciate this great insight and tap of the stick there to Nick for starting the conversation, and we look forward to, like yourself, seeing what Nathan has in store here in week number 3. Thank you very much for doing this, and be sure to keep these lines of communication open.
Yeah, I mean, if I would love to keep talking Nathan Rourke whenever you guys allow me to come on. I really appreciate it. It was a ton of fun, and there is a new BC Lions fan in the universe, and it is me.
Yeah,
outstanding, even better. More to come.
Thanks so much,
Thanks,
Lukas.
Lukas.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
First and Now, the official Lions podcast, and wow, really fired up listening to young Lukas Moore there, breaking down the intricacies of Nathan Rourke's game. That was a different and a fun segment.
Exactly. I knew when we first started talking that the insight he had and the passion he really had for Nathan too, and what he saw in his football abilities, not even football abilities, his leadership abilities, as he proclaimed. I knew he'd be a fun guest to have on. And it's funny, I since I moved here in January, I've been seeing, like, what he was telling me is what I've been seeing in Nathan with how hard he's throwing the ball. I noticed Nathan working after practice, oftentimes alone if he's not throwing. Obviously, he'd be with a receiver, but oftentimes alone, just running, working out after. So I share the same opinion as Lukas. I think the sky's the limit for Mr. Rourke.
Yeah, and hey, the fact that he's got people in Ohio and in the Mid-Atlantic Conference paying attention to Lions football also bodes well for excitement. Excellent stuff. Thanks again for lining that up, Nick. Anyway, Lions and Argos again, Saturday, 7 o'clock. Get your tickets, bclions.com. They're going fast again. And battle of 1-0 teams like we talked about off the top. This Argos team kind of snatched victory from the jaws of defeat, if you will, allowing Montreal to drive down the field. They run the clock down, call the timeout, and a shanked field goal attempt in the final second, so Toronto escapes. But I think the Argos were full marks for that victory. I think that game was not quite as close as the score indicated.
Yeah, another big storyline there too was it was Trevor Harris under center for Montreal for majority of the game. Vernon Adams Jr. got pulled after 4 passes, so Kahari Jones had no hesitation in going to his other veteran quarterback. And Montreal really has that luxury, right, with 2 guys who have proven themselves. But it'll be really interesting to see. I haven't seen news yet about Thursday. I believe it's Trevor Harris now for Montreal.
Well, it's funny. I was kind of watching the game, but I was in and out, and I texted you. I said, "What happened to VA? What happened?" And you're just like, he was pulled. That was it after that. So,
and I have to think, based off what Kahari feels, that he has 2 guys that can give his team a chance to win in every night, and whatever one has is feeling it is who he's going to go with at this point, right? That's what I'm kind of taking from that.
Yeah. So, hey, at least let's knock on wood, other teams are going to their backup option already. Thankfully not here as of yet. Shifting to Friday night last week, the rematch. Hey, I said it. Not big on the week 1 and 2 back-to-backs, but whatever. It's the CFL schedule, so just gotta go with the flow, as they say. Much like the week before, Ottawa put up a hell of an effort, but some red zone issues for the Red Blacks. Credit to the Blue Bombers. We know what they're capable of defensively. They had Jackson Jeffcoat back as well. Winnipeg, the fact that they're winning these games without having to dominate, that's got to be a scary proposition for the rest of the West. But
yeah, that's the glass half full perspective. If you're in Winnipeg right now, that they really, like, they obviously have not played their best football throughout 2 weeks, but they're 2-0 on the schedule or the standings, which is that is a scary sight. And I'm more of that belief as well, because We saw briefs or stints of Zach Collaros in the offense putting together some quick, easy drives, especially when it matters. That's always when it comes down to Winnipeg. They just since the Collaros era started, is that they deliver when it matters, and we saw it later in the Ottawa game too, and they put a late touchdown drive with Ricky Dalton-Schoen scoring the only touchdown for the Bombers in that game, and in the rain as well too. It started really raining pretty hard in Ottawa.
Kind of had flashbacks. It was raining when we were there last year in week 4. I think that was.
Ottawa, they had a few rain games last year at TD Place.
We go to Ottawa next week, so hopefully we get a nice summer night in the nation's capital.
They're due.
Thursday.
They're
yes. Okay. Last week I was outspoken with the fact that the Hamilton Tiger Cats were my biggest disappointment from week 1, biggest surprise. Are you kidding me?
It was hold my beer, they said.
Are you kidding me? 24-3, 24 against Calgary. Bo Levi Mitchell's clearly not on his game. So you figure, okay, this is Hamilton's night all the way. But things tend to happen. Calgary keeps chipping away, and something I'd never seen in my life. 30 years plus years watching this league. Hamilton has a 3rd and inches. They bring out the short yardage team. They're up by 7, and Dane Evans was Dane Evans in, right? He gets stripped of
hell of a game.
He gets stripped of the ball. Calgary takes it back for a defensive touchdown. All of a sudden, the game's tied. Calgary wins it in overtime. That was a colossal collapse, even by Hamilton Tiger Cat standards.
Yeah, a lot of adversity for Hamilton right now.
God,
I'm not willing to write them off yet. I still think they have too much talent on their roster, and they showed in the first half that they can just still steamroll people. But yeah, just
and a little bit of poetic justice on their part. It was basically the same ending as the Grey Cup, where it was a deflection interception in overtime after the opponent gets the field goal and they lose by. Well, it was a touchdown in the Grey Cup. But
the winning team had 33 points, too. Calgary had 33. Wow. Winnipeg, just really similar.
Yeah, it was a Grey Cup, 33-25?
Yeah. 33-30, yeah. And
oh, my God.
Jameer Thurman, again, he ended the game. I thought it was a very physical game from what I saw. Like, there were some big hits. The game-ending interception, too, was Fraser Sopik going underneath on Thomas Earlington to pop it up right into Jameer Thurman's hands, and then they have Cameron Judge, too. He was making a lot of plays in that game. So Calgary's defense, they really bounced back in the second half, and I think they'll figure it out more as the season goes on.
So Calgary, like Winnipeg and Saskatchewan, 2-0. Edmonton falling to 0-2. And a bit better effort from the Edmonton Elks, but they come up short in their home opener. They lost, of course, all 7 home games last year, and they're 0-1 at home to start. Saskatchewan did everything they could to try and give that game away. So many bad penalties. Unfortunately, they lose Dan Clark to a serious injury, but like we're talking about with Calgary and Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, maybe not their best effort, but they come away with the win.
Yeah, they found a way to get it done, and I'll call a spade here. That game on Saturday made the 59-15 in week 1 look a lot better, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think Sask is still going to be a force this season. Cody Fajardo,
big time.
That rollout throw on the winning touchdown, that was an amazing play.
And he was hobbling a bit too, right? He was fighting something.
Yeah, he's been taking a bunch of licks so far this season. So, but we know Cody's it's gonna take a lot for him to get out of a football game, right? He might have taken over the Mike Riley crown as being the toughest player in the CFL.
Yeah, someone's got to take that torch now, right? So, all right, and then as far as week number 3, Saskatchewan goes into Montreal. So we'll see if the Alouettes. You talked a bit about Trevor Harris likely. Well, we think maybe getting the start, but we'll see how the week goes. So that's a tough trip for Saskatchewan, long trip to Montreal. You have a Grey Cup rematch, Hamilton in Winnipeg on Friday. And then I like this. It's not just Labor Day, but you get kind of the early rivalry matchup. Calgary hosting Edmonton. We talked about it, the increased divisional play this year. Everyone in the West plays each other 3 times. That's going to make the race even all that more exciting, more chances to pick up wins in the division, but you also get an early look at a future Labor Day Classic. So can the Elks, they did it last year, they actually went into Calgary and won on Labor Day, and I don't think they won again after that. So that's some pretty intriguing matchups here for week 3.
Yeah, I'll drop a cliche with the Calgary Edmonton when they meet throughout the record books.
There you go. Yep. It's just, you never know. Two opponents that know each other very, very well. That was a funny nugget last year before we wrap things up on First and Now. Calvin McCarty, the pride of North Surrey minor football. I played against him in community football some 25 years ago. Gets drafted by Edmonton, plays a bunch of years. Of course, the Edmonton Eskimos, as they were known, lost like 10 straight Labor Day games, and Calvin McCarty was on the losing end. So McCarty ends up with the Stamps last year and then still loses on Labor Day.
The Marion Hossa of the CFL.
There you go. Not
Corey
a bad
Perry,
comparison.
Corey Perry now.
Yeah, Corey Perry clearly cursed as we record this on the night Tampa Bay looks to get back into the Stanley Cup final, but no more hockey talk tonight. Hey, that was great fun. Thanks again to Lukas Moore for joining us, a little bit of an Ohio perspective on Nathan Rourke. Thanks to you, the listener. Thanks to Kurt Appleby sticking around this afternoon, helping put this program to air inside the Wall Center, the Go-Goat Sports Studios. I'm at Bakes Takes 84. The podcast is at First and Now. You are at Nick_Kowalski on Twitter.
Nick N-I-K. And Lucas is it's Moore, so Moore, Lucas, and Lucas is with a K,
with a
so
K.
Lukas. If you're looking to follow him on Twitter and get some more some Cincinnati sports coverage now as what he's tackling right now, which is Ohio.
Give Lucas a follow. That was some great insight, and we'll be back in here next week ahead of a trip to Ottawa. First road trip of the year, not counting preseason, of course. It'll take until week 4. You ever been to Ottawa?
I have, but I've never been inside their stadium, so I'm really looking forward to that. It looks beautiful on TV.
Look forward to that. Yeah. Yes, so it's weird. We're the last game of the week this week and the first game of the week next week.
Yeah,
on
Thursday
Thursday.
Night Football.
So, he is Nick Kowalski. I'm Matt Baker, and this has been First and Now, and we'll be back next week.